Have you ever played the Queen's Gambit opening and have no idea what's the plan after the opening? Well, there's a position that shows up again and again if you play this opening seriously. I'm no kidding. In this video, I'm going to break down a model game and show you all the key ideas and plans that exist in the position and you must know if you seriously want to improve your chess. But before I begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let's begin. So it's a game between two very strong grandmasters, Alexei Drev versus Ildar Kerulin. White starts the game with 1d4. We have the move knight to f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5. We have the Queen's Gambit on the board, knight to c3, bishop e7, bishop goes to f4, castle, queen to c2. Now, queen c2 is a very flexible move in the position. Many of the beginners or even club levels would go for playing the move e3, which is nothing bad about that, but queen c2 is a bit more flexible move because after queen c2 you are keeping options. Maybe after take on c4 you can strike in the center with e4, maybe you can castle long, or maybe you can just put your rook to d1 instead of c1. There are many ideas behind queen c2. You are also taking away the f5 square from the bishop. So after queen c2, now the best move in this position is to strike in the center with c5, which is not so well known. But if you are a club level player, or even if you are a very strong player, you might face the move knight b to d7, because this is a particular structure which black plays as often as many times, because it's a very flexible structure. It doesn't matter whatever white does, black can definitely go for this particular structure. After knight b to d7, we are going to simplify the position a bit by capturing the pawn on d5. Black have to capture it back with the pawn, as capturing with the knight would be a bad move, because after a knight raid, we can simply chop off the pawn on c7. So after e d5, now after e3 c6, you will realize this is a position which is very often you can see in the games of top level chess players or even a low level chess player or even a beginner. So after c6, we are going to simply develop the bishop to d3. That's exactly what white did. We have rook to e8. Black is also playing way flexible in this position. And now h3. First making a square for the bishop to go back on h2 if in any case black plays the move knight to h5. And now we have knight to f8. And guys, you must remember this is a position, this is an opening that you must know from both the colors with the white and with the black pieces. After knight f8, white castled up, and black played the move knight to e6. Now you must wonder what is the idea of knight to e6. So after knight e6, black's idea in this particular opening is to play the move g6, put the knight on g7, and finally develop the bad bishop, which is the bishop on c8 to f5. Finally trade it, and basically black finishes his development and black is perfectly fine. After knight e6, currently the bishop is hanging, so white simply go back with the bishop, which is once again the best move. g6 by black. Black's idea is knight g7, get the bishop out to f5. We have rook to b1. And now you need to understand this position before I say that you must play the move rook b1. In this particular position, by looking at the pawn structure, you can already get an idea on which side of the board you must play. With the help of looking at the pawn structure of white, the pawn structure of white indicates that white's play should be on the queen side, whereas black's pawn structure indicates that black's play should be on the king side. So in this position, white wants to attack with his pawns by pushing them. So after rook b1, white's idea is pretty straightforward to play the move b4, b5. And as white has got developed all his pieces castled up, rook b1 is the best move in this position. We have knight g7. Black is simply playing with his idea. b4 with the threat of b5. So white first stopped the move with a6, and now we have the move knight to a4. Now many beginners, or even I was thinking what's wrong with the move a4, we are simply pushing up the pawn on a4 with the idea of b5, and turns out there is nothing wrong with it, but even knight a4 should be practically is much better. Why? First let's try to understand what's the idea of a4. After a4, if black continues with bishop to f5, now we are having two possibilities. We can take the bishop and play the move b5, or we can simply play b5 allowing black to take on d3. So first let's try to talk about b5 directly. Black can take the bishop, queen takes, and now bishop d6. So first of all, capturing b5 would be a very bad idea, because black would be having two big weaknesses and white is already better. So black is simply going to develop the pieces with bishop d6. Our bishop was good on h2, so black is trying to trade it. And after bishop d6, we can simply trade the bishops, take on c6, and already a very strong player, or even a club level player, will easily handle this position because black is the one having the weakness. White's position is extremely fine with no weaknesses available in the position. If you're very comfortable about your chances of winning this particular position, you can definitely go ahead and play this position. But you are not really having that much of a big advantage. Second position here is you can take on f5 and you can strike the position with b5. Once again, the same thing is going to happen up, bishop d6. We are going to take on c6, and once again the same position happens up. We can develop the knight on a4 with the threat of knight c5, and you see it's a fine position. Black can play queen c7 check, defend the pawn, give a check, and black is also having a fine position. And once again, we are kind of having a similar position from back then position. And if you're comfortable about this particular position, about your chances, you can definitely go ahead and play this position. But okay, it's a classical game. Both the players are very strong grandmasters. They want to keep maximum pieces on the board to increase their chances of winning. So I believe knight a4 is actually a very well try. You are trying to put maximum pressure on your opponent, which is a great idea. Bishop to f5 by black, going with the same idea. Knight to c5. And now we have the move queen to c8 because the pawn is hanging on b7. And you must remember, capturing on c5 would be a very bad idea, because after bc5, white is simply having the open file for the rook, and the b pawn is simply going to be dead now, sooner or later. And that's it. White is completely winning. So black can't really take, and psychologically speaking up, the knight puts very much pressure on black's mind. Black have to keep finding some defensive moves like queen c8, which is the best move defending the pawn. White simply plays the move rook c1. It's always recommended that you should only take if it's necessary to take. If you're getting some advantage, if you are going to have a bad position, if you don't take. If like you can simply develop your pieces and there's nothing wrong with it, just keep on developing the pieces. Rook c1 getting all the pieces into the game. We have bishop d3, and now we have the move knight to d3. So the question is, why did black took on d3? So a typical idea for black is to get the knight from g7 to f5 to d6, strike with b5, and then put the knight on c4. This is the dream position that black wants to achieve. So black took on d3, and now we have the move knight cross g3. And after analyzing the game, I understood that taking with the queen is a much more better way to continue the position, because after knight to f5, if black goes with the same idea of knight d6, b5, and knight c4, we can first play the move knight e5, centralizing both of our knights. And after knight d6, we are going to play the move queen to d1, which is a very strong move available in the position. What's the idea? I'm going to tell you. For example, if white continues with a4, a very fine move, you want to strike with b5. Here black is having this opportunity of playing the move b5 and putting the knight on c4, and black is having his dream position with absolutely no problem. So we are going to play the move queen to d1, and the main idea of queen d1 is to put the queen on f3 and attack the pawn on f7. So after b5, queen f3. Now for example, if like black is having three options. For example, if black simply tries to centralize his knight with knight d to e4, we can already take the knight. Knight take would be a blunder because f7 pawn is hanging. Black have to capture it back, and we can simply fall back. The c6 pawn is very weak, and we are already winning. So knight e4 doesn't really make any sense. If black plays knight c4, which is the main move I want to talk about, white is having a very strong move, which is knight c to d7. And after knight c to d7 here is, the moment you take the knight on d7, the f7 pawn is simply collapsing, and after the king move, I can simply take off the knight. And I want to play the move bishop e5, and that would be game over. But currently the knight is defending the bishop, defending that square. So I'll just first take out the knight, and now bishop e5 is unstoppable, and white is completely winning. So that's why, going back a bit, if black tries to capture this particular knight, simply knight cross e5, and once again black is having a weak pawn on c6, as there is no knight on d6 to jump on c4. So that's the main problem in this particular position. So knight c4 is already a bad idea. The best move in the position is to play the move rook f8. The idea is pretty clear. Black is defending the pawn on f7, and now black is kind of threatening to play the move knight to c4. But now bishop f4 with the same idea of bishop h6 attacking the rook, and once the rook moves, white can play g4, g5, attack the knight, and capture on f7. So for example, if black plays knight c4, simply rook cross c4, which is a phenomenal move. First of all, if black tries to defend it with king g7, just taking away the h6 square, we are simply going to have knight cross c6. Because after queen cross c6, we are having a discover attack in this position with knight to e6 check, and on the next move, we can simply capture the queen. So playing king g7 would be a bad idea. Knight c4 is the best move available in the position, but after rook cross c4, this is the time to sacrifice the rook, which is a very strong move available in the position. And now black is having two ways to capture with the b or the d pawn. If black captures with the d pawn, which is not the best move, we are simply going to chop off the c pawn now, and we are having two very strong pawns in the position, two knights which are very strong. Black is forced to take the knight on c5, because if black doesn't take, the bishop is sort of trapped. For example, if rook e8, I can take on e7, take, and bishop g5 simply wins the piece. So that's why black is forced to take on c5, and after b cross c5, white is having two passed pawns available in this position. Despite being an exchange round, white is very better. For example, queen e6 trying to stop white from pushing any of the pawns. I can still play the move d5, as taking would be a blunder because of knight to e7 check, and black loses the queen. So that's why it would be a phenomenal position, and it was much easier to play with the white pieces. Going back a bit, that's exactly what happens if black captures with the d pawn. If black captures with the b pawn, I can play the move bishop h6, attacks the rook. The rook move, and now g4. With the idea of g5, attack the pawn on f7. Black have to play the move queen c7. The idea is particularly very simple. Black wants to capture the knight and play the move queen e7 to defend the knight. So we have the move king to g2. And now king g2 is a very hard move if I'm not able to use the engine. It's a very hard move to find on the board. But g5 is a move which comes to my mind. But after bishop cross c5, queen cross f6, we are simply threatening a mate. Black have to go back, and here I can simply take on f8, and it's at least a draw. After knight g4, we are simply threatening a mate. So rook have to move, making some space for the king, and it would simply be a threefold repetition. If black keeps on playing, I can simply take on f7 and just be a pawn up in the position. So it's basically a draw. If you want to win this position, you can actually play with king g2. And my idea is to play the move h4, h5, get another rook to h1, and launch a deadly attack. So basically, black is forced to take on c5. And after bc5, now it's a very healthy position to play with white. Rook b6 is coming up, the c6 is weak. The dark squares are weak, I'm having the dark square bishop. In this position, the knight is hanging. Black have to play the move knight e4, and I can simply chop off the pawn on c4, which is the best move available in the position. And after knight cross c4, obviously if you take, black is going to have a very bad position. Black can play f6 because our idea is particularly very simple. The dark square is extremely weak, we can threaten some mates. So f6, now I can play knight d6, making the black take the knight, and simply bishop d6, bishop f4, simply chop off the knight in this position. And you see, despite being an exchange down, rook c1 is coming up, black is having too many weaknesses, and believe me, it's very easy to play with white. So that's why I believe queen cross d3 would have been the best way to continue the position with each and every detail. White played the move knight d3, nothing wrong with it. Knight goes to f5 with the same idea of knight d6, b5, and knight c4. We have a4, knight goes to d6, and now we have the move knight to d2 by Alexei Drev. Now I was thinking like maybe knight e5 is also a fine move in this position, but maybe after knight e5 he was a bit concerned with knight d7, as after b5, you see, if the bishop remains on h2, you can maybe take the knight on d6, not allowing black to put the knight on c4. So maybe that's the reason, that is one of the key reasons he decides to play the move knight to d2. And now we have the move bishop f8. And if black tries to play the move knight e4 in this position, trying to trade off the knights, white can simply take it and continue the game with queen d1, queen f3, just bishop e5, who knows, maybe knight e5, g4, and basically that's how you can continue the position. Black played the move bishop to f8 in the game, just going back with the bishop. Queen goes back to d1 with the same idea of putting the queen on f3, and you guys know the idea now. And now we have queen to d8. Makes sense because you see the rook is kind of opened up, so it makes sense. And now we have queen d8. And now you see, in this particular position, black can't play b5 because the c6 pawn is hanging. Okay, so after bishop f8, queen d1, it's always a question, can black play b5? But b5 won't be a good move in this position because after bishop cross d6, there is no knight coming on c4. And after bishop cross d6, Now I can simply first of all put my knight on c5, which is a fine position. But yeah, like there are many ways to continue. Knight c5 is also very clean move to play this position. Just play rook a1, allow your opponent to take, because after queen a4 you will see black is having two big weaknesses on the queen side. It's much easier to play with white, and white is already better. You can also continue with knight b3, knight a5, putting more pressure on the pawn on c6, and that's how you should play the position. So that's why queen e8. And now we have knight c5. Once again putting some pressure. The idea is to take the knight and take the pawn on b7. So rook e7 played by black, which is the best move actually in this position. And now we have the move queen to c2 by white. Once again I wonder queen f3 would have been the best way to continue the position, as you guys know each and every detail in the position. Bishop e5, g4, and that would have been the best way to continue the position. But queen c2, nothing wrong with it. White is just trying to wait in the position. And now we have knight to d7. And now in this position, if black tries to play the move b5, white can just take and play move rook a1, just waiting, not pushing, not taking, just playing rook a1, getting the knight in, and on the right time you can finally take the pawn on b5. There is no hurry, because black can never take the pawn on a4, because after take, black is going to have two big weaknesses and black is going to have a bad position. So that's why knight to d7 was played. And now just rook e1. So basically Alexei Drev realized that there is no such break coming up like b5 in this position, because every time he is about to play b5, there is something happening up. He can take on b5 and it's basically not working out 100% well. So he finally realized that black's all pieces are kind of fixed up on the king-queen side. So it's his perfect opportunity and the best move available in the position, which is rook to e1. He's finally prepared to strike in the center with e4, and that's the best move available in the position. You need to keep an open mind to find this move. Knight goes to b6, and now finally black's idea is to get one of his knight on c4. So Alexei Drev finally decided to take on the knight on d6, bishop d6, and now a5, by doing some thorough calculations. And after a5, in the game we had the move knight to a8. Already looks a very passive move. Knight to d7 is the move which came into my mind, but after e4 it's a very bad position. White would love to push the pawn. Even taking the pawn would be good for white. You have to take it back. Knight cross e4. I'm just threatening to take the knight. Queen takes, and knight f6 just wins the queen with a check. You have to go back with the e7, bishop to e7, just covering the square. I can play the move queen e2. Once again the idea still remains the same. Capture the knight, the queen takes it, knight f6 check, bishop f6, and black loses in exchange, which is completely winning for me. You can't even go back with the rook because the b7 is hanging. So that's the reason black decided to play the move knight a8. And now black's idea is to just play the move knight c7 and knight b5. That's a good idea. And now e4 once again, takes knight e4, bishop e7, rook e2, getting both the rooks on the e file. Definitely white is having a weakness, but you can't really take it. For example, in this very position, you can't really, like after rook e2, you can't really take the weakness, because after rook d1, the queen is not really having many squares to go. If the queen goes back, there is a very strong move knight d6. You can't take because the rook is hanging. And you move the rook, you lose the bishop. So that's why capturing the pawn on d4 would be a poison pawn. So that's why knight c7, rook e1, getting all the pieces. Rook goes to f8. And now we have the move queen to c4 by Alexei Drev. Now in this position, black is only having one idea, which is knight goes to d5 and strike with b6. That's the only idea black is having. And that's the reason Alexei Drev should have played the move knight to d2 with the idea of knight c4. Like for example, after knight d5, knight c4, you see it looks like white is just losing a pawn. But first of all, b5 is not going to happen, because after takes, black simply loses a piece. That's the idea. And in this position, after knight d5, knight c4, if black tries to capture the pawn, there is a very deep idea and logic behind this move. After queen d2, we simply attack the knight. So now black is having two ideas. If black first of all takes the knight, I can take it back. And after a queen trade, because the knight was hanging, after a queen trade, knight goes back. And after knight b6, you just need to realize the rook is kind of stuck. Black is practically a rook down, because the rook can't really go on a8, because I can simply take it. So black is kind of forced to take the knight, and after takes, the rook goes back. But after rook d7, both the rooks are jumping on the 7th rank. Capture the pawn on the 6th rank is very strong, and that's winning. So that's why bishop c5 would be a bad idea. And if knight d5, just going back with the knight, still the idea remains the same. After takes, the rook is hanging, and like if you take if you take the pawn, you lose the bishop. If you take the knight, I'll just take it back, and after rook goes back, just queen c3. Both the rooks are coming in, and believe me, the pawns are very weak on the queen side. Despite being a pawn down, white is completely winning. That's the only idea white just needed to get prepared of. And another idea here is like after knight b4, queen d2. Oh yeah, that's it. That's the idea. But in the game we had queen to c4 by Alexei Drev. And after queen c4, we had knight d5. And now b6 is the idea which he actually missed. He played the move knight to c3. At least he should have played the move knight to d3. Because after b6, like after b6, at least the c6 pawn is hanging. Yeah, but he played the move knight c3, which allowed black to get some counterplay on the queen side and finally opening up the rook. We have a trade. The queen goes back, bishop f6, and now somehow black is generating some heavy play. Rook d1, rook goes over here, takes checks, knight over here, bishop g7, and now black could have took on d4. It's a free pawn. You can't take because you basically lose the rook. But instead black played the move queen d8, push the pawn, waiting, just improving the pieces, and knight c4, queen b3, knight goes back, striking in the center, but black also did the same to simplify the position a bit. We have a take, it looks like white is an exchange down, but after knight b5, basically white is getting the material back. It's an even position, completely draw queen a4, bishop goes back, and now at this particular moment white should have played knight d7, which is a bit hard to find psychologically because you were completely dominating the game right from the start. Knight f6 check, queen goes to a1, and basically definitely black is a pawn up, but there are couple of checks, many checks available. It's very hard to stop checks, and that's the reason it's a draw. But instead we had queen to e8, which was a blunder because after queen e7 you have to trade off the queens. If you trade off the queens, first of all the knight is hanging, so basically it's completely lost. You take, the knight is hanging, you move the knight, I can just take this, it's completely winning. Yeah, so if you don't take the queen, which was happened in the game, black can simply take the pawn, and now that's winning. Black is a pawn up with a very strong bishop, and that's the reason black is just winning. And after a couple of moves later, black just made a queen, and after b1 queen, white decides to resign the game. The logic is simple. If you take queen h1 check and you lose the queen, and that's game over. So that was the game. It was a complete breakdown of this particular game. And what's so special about this game? Many of the beginners would ask. So basically, the position that arises at this particular moment, let me show you. This particular position is very often, it's very often, believe me. And the move which black played is also like a very standard idea that you must know if you're ever playing with the black pieces as well. And believe me, what white played in the game was very logical. If you play this, if you're a club level player, or even if you're a 2000, 2200 player, both the players who are playing the game are top-notch grandmasters. If you're playing this against your opponent who is black, your pieces, your position is just so good, they're eventually going to crack under pressure. And if you are a player who likes to keep the position very simple, you can anyways try to trade off the pieces, which I showed you. Like, there were a couple of chances. Just let me go back and just let me show you guys. Like in this particular position, which was okay, just give me a sec. Yeah, after takes, like, this is winning, and after knight c5, queen goes to c8. Okay, what was the position? Yeah, in this particular position, after a4, bishop here, you can always, like, if you want, you can take and play b5. If you are fine with this particular endgame, you can definitely go for playing this endgame, because this is an endgame. Even if Magnus Carlsen is playing against you, I believe you are going to get a draw, because black is the one having the weakness. White's possession is full immune. There is no weakness, and white can definitely go for playing up this possession if you are absolutely fine with the draw, or if you just want to play a one-sided game. If you are a good endgame player, I believe you can simply make this into a win. So yeah, this was all the idea that you must know with the white pieces, and with the black pieces, it's also a very solid opening. And that's one of the key reasons black was able to win in the end of the day. So yeah, that was the game. So I hope that after watching this video, you are pretty hyped up of playing the Queen's Gambit, and make sure to check it out. Make sure to play it on the board. And this was the key idea that you must know that you must know. If you ever take the pawn on c cross d4, this is a must idea, because after e cross g4 you basically launch a minority attack with majority attack. Basically you create a weakness and you attack that weakness and you win the game. That's how the game goes. So thanks for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed the analysis. If you did, make sure to smash that subscribe button, and I'm going to see you soon in the next one. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.